Hey everyone, that's I'm never able to match the vibes of that intro music, but yeah, we'll try our best to keep the energy up. Thanks everyone for joining. I can see a few hellos in the chat already, so hello there, and I see people joining the stream as well. So yeah, thanks for joining us this morning. We've got 30 minutes of yeah some quite good detailed insight into GA4. It's been a topic that's been on everyone's radar for a while, but in kind of classic marketeer fashion, we've known it's coming without maybe doing everything about it in advance. So we've got yeah still some time to get fully across the topic, and yeah, that's part of what today is about, to help everyone do that. So I'll just join a few people onto the call here who are going to be taking us through a couple of talks today. So first up, we've got Payal from Google. Hey Payal. Yeah, Payal's going to be giving us the lowdown from Google's perspective, and really kind of setting the scene for us when it comes to GA4. And then from the impression side, we've got Sam, who's now also on screen. Hey Sam.
Hello.
So yeah, Sam's from the paid media team here at Impression. He's going to kind of be giving you guys our take and our kind of top tips on GA4 implementation, everything that goes along with it, really. So yeah, as I said, a few people have already dropped some hellos into the chat. If you want to, anyone watching at home, you want to drop questions into them, either for both Pyle and Sam or someone in particular, just let us know, and we'll be sure to put those questions to the team. This is 30 minutes to get as much insight as everyone can into kind of the world of GA4. So I'm going to remove Sam, bring up Pyle's screen, and disappear myself. And Pyle, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm Payal. I work at Google and I'm a strategic agency manager. I've been working and partnering with Impression for several years now. And today we're going to be talking about GA4. Fundamentally, it's a web analytics tool. Our goal is to help you understand what the tool is, why many businesses today are talking about it, and most importantly, where you may be able to provide more valuable insights as media experts. So let's start by talking about the evolution of the digital space itself, because the world has changed a lot since its birth. Since Google Analytics launch, a massive amount of people have come online, fundamentally shaping the space, making new requirements in technology for which we use with customers today. We've gone from the dial-up world that we lived in, where we were sharing connections via landlines, and to an always-on internet today, which is consistently at our fingertips, maybe even our wrists. And they're online across a variety of different devices and environments. It's clear that the same device or browser level identifiers that we were building our solutions on prior to where we are today no longer hold the pillars that we need to build the future on. Amid these rapidly increasing changes in the devices we use, the connectivity increasing overall, we're seeing a couple of different trends. One, consumers demand personalization. More than ever, consumers understand technology and data and expect that data to be used and provide better experiences. In fact, it's often a key factor in determining brand consideration and loyalty. This is also paralleled with privacy being an absolute table stake and a right that deserves to be respected. Consumers believe that their data should be accessed with permission and will take precautions to protect their online information. This has prompted regulatory and technical changes that fundamentally shift how digital marketing activities are conducted across several platforms. To address this challenge, to fuel innovation with modern marketers are investing in analytics today. This means not just collecting the most data, but also within a framework that is safe, respects the privacy, and when appropriate, satiates that demand for personalized, delightful experiences that we spoke about a little bit earlier. And Google isn't just preaching here, it's making those investments too. That's why it's built the next generation of analytics. It's often dubbed as GA4, and that's what I'm going to be counting on moving forward. It's built from ground up for modern marketers to innovate as they create and challenge the current status quo for consumer experiences. It's powerful, yet it's flexible and supports the journey with consumers across devices, and most importantly, drives respectful yet meaningful personalization. So when we're talking about GA4 as a platform for modern marketing, it relies on a few key pillars. One, a flexible data infrastructure that allows cross-device and first-party data to come together and show you the true customer journey. Two, a means for making sense of this data through Google's best-in-class machine learning. Three, the ability to seamlessly activate across Google and non-Google partners. And four, and critically, a platform that embraces privacy from the ground up with tools that empower respectful privacy approach. When we're looking at GA4 side by side with Universal Analytics, which is soon to be the predecessor of GA4, moving from single device worldview to a cross device worldview powered by a waterfall of identity solutions. This is supported by a change in the underlying measurement infrastructure where GA4 leverages flexibility and fundamentally cross device events as its basis. It also unlocks the ability for stronger integrations to fuel smarter analysis and buying. And finally, like I've said multiple times before, a privacy centric approach, which sits front and center for the future of marketing. All of this is kind of brought together by the user ID piece of GA4. The user ID that I mentioned is a critical joining point, not just for cross device data, but also to join online and offline data. It enables modern marketers to bring and unify data from one, your website, which is a web activity and information about the campaigns that drove them there. Two, offline interactions, such as those that took place in store, through a partner, or any other non-trackable environment. Three, app interactions. And finally, all the data from warehouses such as CRMs, purchase history, LTV, customer segments, etc. It's putting all of this together to understand across devices, giving incredibly powerful views of customers that have never been available before. Like I said before, it also allows for deeper integrations for further insight generation and activation in GA. It has integrations with BigQuery, which provide analytics teams with stronger options to advance analysis with Google Analytics trademark integrations such as Salesforce and Google media buying platforms. It'll go even deeper than before. It'll power audience creation, bidding optimization that is more powerful and streamlined than ever before. And Sam will speak to you about that in a bit. We've actually also kind of seen how this plays out for several businesses to transition to this new platform. And across all major verticals, there are both risks of losing budgets and not acting to meet the needs of modern marketing, and the opportunity to drive more effective, meaningful campaigns and embracing the tenets of modern marketing. Across all of these verticals, the opportunity outweighs the risks. Once your properties are up and running, we have a few key steps that are outlined with estimated effort levels. These include things like activating Google signals, which can be as simple as clicking a box, and linking Google Ads, also very simple, to some of the more advanced tasks, such as capturing your signed in IDs through user ID, or passing offline events through measurement protocol. It's best to work directly with your GA experts and your agency partners. Big shout out to the impression team here, who've done a phenomenal job of kind of working with their clients on this transition. But it's important to work with them and outline a full plan. And there are a variety of steps to be taken, and there will be fairly nuanced based on the business that you are. It's important to start making the migration before the sunset of UA, which is, again, not far from now on the 1st of July. So start now. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sam. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Payal. I will go straight in, I think, to Sam's talk and pop it up here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adam. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm a PPC specialist here at Impression, and I want to talk to you today about why GA4 isn't just something that we have to do because UA is being sunset, but why it's quite worth getting to grips with it in more detail because it can do a lot for account performance. Beyond Google Ads, even across your entire marketing spectrum, even outside of the digital realm, it can really improve revenue, profitability, etc., etc. So I'm going to talk mostly about audiences and reporting. I'd love to go into a lot of detail about these things, but obviously I don't want to keep you here for too long. I'm going to do this by going through a quick intro to GA4, the differences with universal analytics. Then we'll talk about audiences, what they are, how we can use them, how to make them, and then a bit more about reporting and what, like, the best way to report really, and how we can report to improve performance and not just on the performance that has happened. I think that's quite an important differential in modern marketing today. And finally, I'll have a bit of a concluding note on the predictive metrics that GA4 offers, which are completely new to GA4. They're still in their infancy. They have a lot of promise. There's a couple of downsides in that you have to have a pretty huge analytics account to get them to work well, but they're very, very cool. So to talk about GA4, first I'm going to talk about the myth of Prometheus. We tend to think of Prometheus as the thief that stole fire from the gods in a symbolic gesture of enlightening humanity, but it's all a bit deeper than that. Essentially, Prometheus gifted humanity the tools by which they could find and create things for themselves, so they could discover their own insights, you might say. In Aeschylus's Prometheus Unbound, which is the big book where you may learn about Prometheus, it said that he made plain all that was hidden and revealed the treasure concealed beneath the earth. And so we might say that GA4 has Promethean potential in the sense that the big change from UA to GA4 is that it empowers users with greater control over what they're doing. So it emphasizes bespoke analysis. You analyze your site performance in your way. And at first, this can feel a little bit resistant because it doesn't have as many predefined reports as UA had, and it shifts away from some of the arbitrary stats like sessions that UA was very focused on. It does this to try and avoid leading you to certain conclusions, because obviously the conclusions you need to make about your own site aren't necessarily the conclusions other people need to make about their site performance. So what GA4 does is it provides the tools to help us come to our own conclusions specific to our situations. It makes plain all that is hidden and reveals the treasure concealed beneath the earth. That one might be a little bit of a stretch. So why GA4 over UA then? Because I think actually this is a flat upgrade, and I know a lot of people have struggled in the transition at different times. A lot of these points have been covered by Pyle already, so I won't dally too long on them. But first of all, the event-based measurement rather than the session-scoped measurement is very, very, very important. It essentially allows us to have a fuller understanding of the customer journey. Events are essentially moments of customer interaction, so it makes sense to use these as the basis for GA4 rather than sessions, which are a little bit arbitrary. Alongside that, you have data-driven attribution, which essentially is a better way of looking at incoming clicks than last click. Data-driven attribution as standard alongside event-based measurement paints you a full picture of the customer journey, so you can see touch points beyond the last ad click and get a better sense of where you should invest. As Pyle mentioned, privacy-first design is very, very important to GA4. It's got cookieless user identification methods through things like device ID and user ID. These are only going to become more important over the next year or so. You can also implement consent mode, as you can with Google Ads. Some people might be familiar with it. This essentially allows you to model lost traffic to people that decline cookie banners. It can be really, really useful in understanding how much you're losing and getting a sense of the conversions you are probably getting, and it starts to match up a little bit more with your actuals. Pyle mentioned the BigQuery integration too. This is great, really, really useful thing. It's a little bit complicated to explain in that it exports all of the raw event and user level data from GA4. This essentially means that you have access to everything in its base form and you can do anything with it. There's no data sampling, thresholding, anything like that. Really, really useful. And then finally, AI and machine learning lives at the heart of GA4, and I imagine over the next few years it's going to become a bigger part of GA4 too. The predictive metrics I mentioned earlier are very, very cool. Google will just apply their machine learning algorithms to your GA4 property for free, provided you meet the criteria, and that has a lot of promise. So let's talk about audiences. If you've already had a look at GA4's audiences, you'll notice they're a bit uncanny. They're kind of the same, but different. There's two reasons for this, maybe three, the third one just being the UI. It feels very different to UA. But these two are the ones I want to talk about. First, the focus on events rather than sessions changes the way that we think about audiences more generally. So you can now string together sets of events across multiple sessions and use those to create audiences. So you could create an audience of people that did X in session 1 and then Y in session 2 and bring an audience together from that data. That's something that's very challenging to do in UA, and it's just not really built for looking at the customer journey in a more holistic way. And then there's an enormous amount of metric differences with GA4. You have stuff like active users, engaged sessions, and then there's parameters attached to all of this stuff. don't want to make this confusing, so I'm not going to go into enormous detail about absolutely everything here. But it's important to understand what an engaged session is, because it is very, very fundamental to GA4 reporting. This is essentially just sessions that lasted for 10 seconds or longer, had one or more conversion events or 2 or more page or screen views. People that interact with your website trigger a specific event, which is a session like user engagement event, which is sent to GA4. That doesn't happen in UA at all. So this, first of all, stops us counting lots of sessions where people aren't really doing much at all on the site. And second of all, it gives us an idea of the kind of engagements that are taking place. Now, GA4's primary user metric is called active users. This has no proxy in Universal Analytics at all, and this can be a bit confusing at first, because in all of the default reports for GA4, it uses the active users metric and not the users metric that you would see in UA. Now, the active users metric is based on engaged sessions. This is just the number of distinct users who had engaged sessions, or it was their first visit. It's really important to understand that, just so you can understand the basic reports there and also start to build audiences that make sense. Audience curation is super, super important in GA4. A lot of reasons for this. To understand it, we need to understand 3 key terms. So I'm just going to run through these things quite quickly. Segments, you will know from Universal Analytics. It's the button at the top. You select either paid clicks or all traffic, etc., etc. They're a little bit different in GA4 in that you can't use them in the standard reports. A lot of people will be used to filtering their UA properties by segments and then applying them and just having a look. You can't really do that in GA4, slightly different approach. You use comparisons for that, which are essentially GA4's take on segments from a reporting point of view. Now, both segments and comparisons are retroactive. They're the way you're just going to look at top-level data all the time. Audiences, which is what we want to talk about primarily right now. One, it's not retroactive, so you need to create these sooner rather than later because they need to gather data over time to be useful. These are what you can export to Google Ads. You can use these in comparison, so they become a core part of reporting. You can look at what a certain audience did or didn't do versus another audience. Really, really useful, very important going forwards. And like I said, these are not retroactive, so you need to get ahead of configuring them for your business or client. The sooner you do it, the sooner they can start collecting event and user data, and then they'll be good to go by the time we have to use GA4 in 2 months. Hopefully you're already using it, but maybe not. So I want to just take you through the audience creation process. It can be a little bit jarring at first. It's actually quite straightforward, but we'll create an audience together in a second after I go through this. So this is just the basic interface. You access the audiences in the property settings. You hit the admin cog, then there's that little audiences button under the create property section that I've highlighted with a red square at the bottom left. When you've already got audiences in the account, you will see some top-level stats on them. This is not present in UA either, so you can see if the audience has grown in whatever period you have selected. Clicking on new audience over on the right here presents you with a choice. You can either use a bunch of GA4 suggested audiences. These are pre-populated. They're really useful, primarily because they use the same interface as a custom audience creation process. So you can open up pre-populated audiences and have a look at how they're built, and then you can start to build your own based on looking at how Google's done it to default. So like I said, the Spartan UI can look a bit intimidating, but it's actually quite straightforward and it's pretty logical. So once you've hit create new audience, you'll be hit with this screen. It's very vague. At first, you're like, what's going on? Totally unclear. So the first thing to do is click this add new button, and then you'll see the menu on the left pop up. You can select any dimension criteria here, metric criteria. So you can go by events. You might want to select, people that purchased or didn't purchase if you want to create basic remarketing lists. The other important thing to note here is that this little green highlighted people on the top right of this box is how you can change the condition scoping of GA4's audience setup. This matters because it's across all sessions within the same sessions or within the same event. The last one, you probably won't use that often unless you're making quite complicated events and audience setups, but making sure you select across all sessions or within the same session is very, very important. Here, then, we will just make an audience that essentially resembles Universal Analytics returning customers audience, because GA4 doesn't have this by default, and GA4 refers to this group as established users instead of returning users. So we just add at the top, event equals session start as included, and then we'd add another one of these condition groups and exclude event equals first visit. and it just temporarily excludes all the people that hit the first visit event, but includes everyone that have started a session. And there you go, you have essentially a returning users audience. Very simple, basic audience to put together. There's some other audience settings at the top right of the screen here that are under box 2. Membership duration you can set to whatever you want up to the maximum limit. And you can also create an audience trigger. Now what this does is it logs another event if a user joins this audience. You might want to use this for complex journeys where you're creating events based on audiences to join other audiences, but it all gets a bit chaotic quickly. Third point here is just what you'll see on the bottom right is a summary of the amount of people that are estimated to be in this audience. But like I said, audiences aren't retroactive. It's just telling you who would have been in it. You need to set it, create it, and then from the day you've created it, it will start to collect that data. Now, there's a few limitations to be aware of that I've highlighted at the bottom of this slide, and that's that there's a maximum 100 audiences per GA4 property. Audiences cannot be edited after they're created, only archived, which is essentially removed, and they aren't retroactive yet again. So understanding GA4's events and parameters can help you to build smarter audiences in general. There's a lot on this slide, so I'll take you through some points, but don't worry about consuming all of this information at once. So under this enhanced measurement bit, I'm just talking about events that GA4 pushes naturally. Once you've set it up, it will just start to collect these data points naturally as long as you're connected to Google Signals and all of that stuff. The general process for how an event fires and how a parameter interacts with it is that the event takes place like a page view. It collects extra parameters alongside that event, like page location, and sends that along with it. In GA4, you can look at all of this data yourself, so you can see all the parameters that are coming with any given event. These parameters are used to populate different metrics and dimensions. So page view here would populate the view's metric, but then the parameter of page location populates dimensions for what page they were on. Now, there's one really, really cool parameter that doesn't exist in Universal Analytics and is the bedrock of making good audiences in GA4, and that's the user engagement MSEC parameter. And this is essentially the time between events, or the engaged time between events that are taking place. So you can select in milliseconds when you're setting up audiences how long you want to wait between certain events before you enter certain audiences, certain users into an audience. This is very, very unlike UA, where you were reliant on session counting and people just moving to different pages on your website. Whereas here you can see people that are actually engaged and clicking through. You can have quite tight time components in audiences and create much higher intent remarketing lists. Now we'll touch a bit on reporting. So analytics has always been very, very, very important for reporting. That much is clear. As marketers, I'm sure we've spent a lot of time reporting in various ways. Now, historically, it might look something like this. Campaigns perform in some way. The results go into analytics. You report on the performance, and maybe this results in potential granular campaign changes. And obviously, if we're talking 5-6 years ago, those changes could be very, very granular. But I think what GA4 does very well is keys into a bit more of an optimization cycle, which is at the heart of modern marketing, really. And this is a continual process by which results are in analytics. You report on that performance. You can make strategic cross-channel adjustments. GA4's natural cross-channel, cross-domain tracking lends itself very well to picking up information from different channels, working out where you should invest your budget, and then that can feed campaign performance, which then feeds results back into analytics. And this is just a continual cycle all the time, and it's a much more higher level strategic cycle too. So how do you build smart reports in GA4? Obviously, I don't have time to run through absolutely everything that I would like to in terms of reporting, but two things that are worth knowing here, and that's that there's two different types of report in GA4. One is just reports, and the other is explorations. So reports use data that's collected on a daily basis. This is intended for high-level analysis, just general reporting, as the word tells you. Explorations, on the other hand, are a completely new thing in GA4. They're an ad hoc technique. So they query the raw data in the same way the BigQuery export does, and they're designed for really drilling into what's going on. They're really, really useful for understanding quirks in data or getting to grips with what your users are actually doing on site. So to write a good report, there's a few things that all key into the same overarching objective, which is you need to be insightful in reporting. If you're making a report, why are you putting anything in it? You want a goal beyond just numbers reporting, and I think GA4 lends itself to that. It's so focused on engagement that we need to focus on engagement as well. All good reporting should be aligned clearly with broad business KPIs, and we need to use GA4 features like comparisons to maximize insight. And then, of course, we should support this with an understanding of the data itself, but that's a big topic to go into, maybe another webinar. As a quick example of an exploration you can put together, this is what it would look like when it was completed. This is just transaction ID, the dimension default channel group, and then purchase revenue. Now, these two dimensions are different to session default channel group and session source medium, which is what you'll see in the traffic acquisition reports. So the things highlighted yellow use data-driven attribution in the dimension. So this is what you want to use to look at DDA resolved revenue. This is really, really important for all e-commerce GA4s, and you should probably set this exploration up if you don't have it already. It's a really simple one to do. You can do it at transaction ID level or just channel level. Very fundamental stuff. Then finally, Google's predictive metrics have so much potential. They automatically apply these to your accounts, and they try to model the user behavior. So they model purchase and churn likelihood, and you can use these to build audiences, and you can use them to glean insights. The downside that I mentioned earlier is that they're not available to everyone because you need a lot of purchases and it needs to be consistent. So it's within a 28-day window. You need 7 days of 1,000 conversions and 1,000 non-conversions, etc. But what this could do in the future is phenomenally important. If you can start to get to grips with the actions on site that indicate potential purchase if somebody's remarketed to, you can create almost perfect remarketing lists based on the predictive metrics. So these things hold a lot of promise. All right, thank you very much for your time. Quick reminders: 1, the GA4 deadline is looming. 3 priorities before then: 1, sort your conversion tracking out in body and Google Ads. 2, get your audiences set up because they're not retroactive. 3, be reporting ready. And then second thing, there's a demo property that Google have. You can click on this link if we send the deck out, or you can just Google GA4 demo account, click there, and you can just play around with it and explore all the features that GA4 has to offer.
Amazing. Thanks, Sam. That was, fantastic. Really good. I think, loads to take away there. And I've got a couple of questions we can run through. I think we just want to be taking this kind of energy, and I think from AJ, just bring it on, really. Not that there's much we can do about it, but I think that's the way to be approaching it. If anybody else at home doesn't have any questions for the team just before we jump off, please do whack them in the chat. But I guess for me, it's like Sam, a question for you, I guess, with the kind of predictive side of things here. Do you see any kind of pushback coming from non-marketing, C-suite types? And there's sometimes skepticism around digital reporting at the best of times. I think when we're talking predictive, do you see it coming? So
I think there's a couple of points of pushback. So the predictive metrics, maybe not. I feel like they're probably something that those people won't even see a lot of the time. We're just going to use them to optimize towards. The data-driven attribution, on the other hand, and consent mode, yeah, absolutely. Those things are going to get pushed back because you are modeling conversions that are lost. The easy answer to that is that the best marketing is always one that's keyed into the actuals and the business CRM. So if you have all of that visibility, you can start to see if that modeling is making sense with relation to what you're actually getting from the business. And I think as we go through the next couple of years, having all of that integrated, marketing is not going to be good without it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess for both Payal and Sam, I guess when GA4 was first announced, and as we've rolled through, there's always been not resistance, just I guess it's just change, right? I think marketers, as much as anyone, don't like change. Is that kind of just the main reason that there's been obviously not a huge amount of pushback, just some uncomfortableness, and it's just the UI changes and just change generally? Is that kind of where it's come from, do you think?
I think yes, absolutely. It's a big shift to expect people to adapt to, like you said, Sam. Like, it was session driven. It was so deeply driven by reporting and what made sense for let's say the website and nitty-gritties and details like that. It was very much reporting and data. But I think the way we are kind of pivoting GA4 is essentially driving business insights. So it's very much pinned in what the business metrics are, not what the website's metrics are, offline conversions. It's trying to bring almost an evolution of what we've seen marketing go through in the last many years to what reporting needs to evolve as, analytics need to evolve as. So change of this nature absolutely means for a lot of people to do things differently, and it is obviously met with a fair bit of resistance because it requires time, it requires effort, it requires almost adapting a new language. So much appreciated journey and resistance there. Also understand that it's not been simple, which is where I think, you all come in as an agency. We have GA experts, we have Google, a lot of different people working on the same solutions. It's not as simple as it used to be. So yeah, acknowledge that.
Sam, anything to add from your side before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, I think that first of all, the UI does make a big difference. Like you first open up GA4 and there's just not much going on, and UI is chock full of information. So I feel like people just immediately have their backs arched against that. But there's a lot more you can do with GA4, but you have to do it, and that's always going to encounter some resistance too. But I think something that is quite fundamental to this, and this is not said as a slight against us as marketers in general, but I think we're not always very good at data. And I think with universal analytics over the past 3-4 years and the way that we're looking at conversions and understanding all that stuff, we're presenting information that just isn't very good as cohesive data. And GA4 is better at this stuff, and it's giving us better data to work with. We just need to understand how to use it a lot more. So I think a lot of the time we've been communicating metrics without fully understanding how they work. And with GA4, we need to understand them, and that can be a bit of pushback.
Great, that makes sense to me. I think Chloe does have a question. Just checking we've got time. We're okay to run on here. Obviously, I appreciate everyone's busy, so drop off if need be. But yeah, a couple of questions here. Yeah, Chloe, ask away. I'll pop AJ's question up whilst you type that out. But yeah, AJ's got a question here around the checklist of what's worth setting up for a good GA4 setup. I think Sam, you mentioned a couple of pieces there. It might be good to kind of run through.
I mean, the checklist is probably quite long, and it depends how early on in the stage we are here. I mean, obviously, first of all, the tracking needs to be in a good place. The tracking for GA4, but then also the links with accounts. So if you're exporting conversion events from GA4 to Google, you need to get that set up ahead of time. You need to make sure that the data looks right and makes sense to you before we have to use it. I think, like I mentioned in the presentation, the real priorities are first conversions, second audiences, because they're not retroactive. You're probably already using remarketing, so you're going to need to get them set up so that you can continue to use them once analytics is mothballed. And then 3, I think realistically, it's just becoming reporting ready, getting familiar with those data points I was talking about that maybe we don't exactly understand how the metrics work or how engaged sessions differ from sessions, especially when you're dealing with client communications. Being able to explain in layman's terms what those things mean will be really, really useful, because it can be a little confusing, and people might say, why are sessions lower, or why does revenue look different to how it did before?
And I think you kind of ranked them by sort of the amount of resource required to actually input, which I think is that's the way we approach audits across channels here at Impression. So we're definitely on board with that approach.
I'll share my slides afterwards, so Ajay, you can look into it. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. I think the recording, obviously, this will be available on YouTube via the link, and yeah, we're going to share the slides around as well. So yeah, great. We've got another question here as well, just around first click attribution, the elimination of that. Any thoughts around that? Open up to both of you.
I mean, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think great question. I did expect this. And I think with a lot of what I spoke about was there's almost been this shift in how people are consuming information on the internet, but also in the way that they're comfortable sharing data. Users have spoken clearly over the last few years that they don't want an infinite amount of tracking. So it absolutely kind of reached a point where we had to acknowledge the need for better privacy measures, and this was done across the ecosystem, across several platforms and partners. And I think it's just acknowledging that shift in the end user's mindset that we all almost kind of like domino effect, kind of launching new products, working through it. So there's a part of this where, let's say, a platform like Google would create a better solution like GA4, which respects privacy of users. But it also means that businesses need to be a little more comfortable with acknowledging that their users require more privacy and they're not okay with being tracked all the time. So the first party cookie world that we lived in previously has, for good reason, kind of moved to a better solution where we're not using first party data anymore. We're using model data, third party data, and kind of integrating all of these bits and piecing things together. The good information is we have the technology to be able to do that and to provide solutions that work for users ultimately. As much as we're businesses, we're also users on the internet, right? So I think it is a big shift. I acknowledge this means it's more complicated, it is more modeled, it's not the actuals that maybe marketers like myself, when we started out, were used to kind of working with. it is a different world. And even when I look at like first click attribution, I think even for myself, I do see kind of interacting across several devices. Like as I speak to you, there are like 4 devices in front of me. So we have evolved as a generation, and this is acknowledging that shift as well, and kind of being at the forefront of that a bit as well, because I think we're building marketing for the future now.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, on the one hand, I feel pretty indifferent towards it because I don't think first click attribution has ever really been first click attribution. It's never necessarily the true first touch point. And then what's the use of it? Realistically, you're dropping off a lot between 2 different attribution points. So not so worried about losing it in that regard. Sometimes it's nice to look at in terms of just understanding where people have clicked multiple times across different campaigns, what path they've taken. You can still see some of that data in conversion pathways through the DDA stuff. But also, in some sense, first click attribution hasn't actually gone away because the user acquisition report in GA4 is still done on last click, but it's first user last click. So it's the first time that user came onto the analytics platform. That's essentially first click attribution in some sense. It's just tied to user ID.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Great stuff. Thanks for that question. Chloe, still time if you want to ask that question. If not, obviously we're going to send the deck, as I said, around and the recording, and all of our contact details will be in there as well if you want to send that question over by email. There's about a 10-second delay, I know, between when you type in a question on YouTube and when we see it here. So I'm just stalling here, just filling in case the question does come in. But yeah, as I said, if not, we're all available on the contact details when we share the slides around. So, you've put it in already. I'm afraid I can't see it then in that case.
Invisible.
Yes. So apologies for that, Chloe. It's not coming up on our end, I'm afraid. But yeah, if it's available on the stream and I just can't see it, that's some kind of technical glitch there. But we'll pick the question up offline, and I'm sure we can see it in the comments on the actual video itself and pick it up there. So apologies for that, Chloe, but thanks everyone for the engagement, and we'll put it in again. Afraid not. No, I'm not sure what's happening. I can see all your other messages apart from the important one, I'm afraid. No, it's not coming up, I'm afraid. But as I said, I'm sure we'll be able to pick that up offline and
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all of us are happy to talk about any of this stuff. So
for sure, we'll catch up there. But yeah, great. Thanks everyone for joining in and the questions, and obviously thanks to Sam and Powell for the talk today. Super useful stuff. So we'll end it there. Thanks everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.